Welcome to a couple of monkeys.
We're going to be doing something a little different today.
Today we are making a big update to our video editing PC. We are updating our CPU, and for that CPU we need to update the motherboard, and along with the motherboard we are also updating our RAM.
For our motherboard we're using an Asus B550M Plus Tough Gaming. For the CPU, I will be using the AMD Ryzen 9 3900X. When installing it, there's a little arrow in the corner of your CPU that will align with a corner on the motherboard. Make sure those two are aligned. The cooler that came with the CPU included thermal paste. We set the cooler onto the CPU and locked it into place with the tabs. The RAM that we are using are Corsair Vengeance LPX 16 gigs. They are installed in both the gray channels in order to operate correctly. They are pressed in until it clicks into place.
And now we are hooking up the CPU fan to the motherboard along with the RGB cables that came with the fan.
That is about all I can install on this computer right now. Now we get to take apart our old computer.
We open the computer case and we take out the GPUs. We also took out the wireless card because all of those components were very close to each other.
I removed all of the electrical hookups to the motherboard.
We carefully removed all the screws holding the older motherboard to the CPU case.
After cutting some zip ties, the motherboard should come free.
We also uninstalled the M2 SSD from our older motherboard.
On the newer motherboard, we go ahead and install the M2 SSD. There are two places for M2s on this motherboard, and we decided to use the one with the heatsink.
Then we installed the I/O shield. We had to move around the standoffs because our new motherboard was smaller than the old.
Then we went ahead and installed the motherboard with the mounting screws. Now we go ahead and install all of the power connectors. Now the USB Gen 1 header.
As Tim is installing the SATA cables, I decide to go ahead and blow some dust in his face.
And now I install the last power connector.
Then we go ahead and install the COM port header and the USB header.
Then we install the F panel and the TPM header. These are really small connectors and they can be hard to see.
Then we go ahead and install the wireless card into its slot. We also plug in the wireless card to its USB header.
Now I install the GPUs on the new motherboard.
We had 3 fans, 2 of them came along with this case and one of them we had on hand. We went ahead and installed them in the fan header.
We install the power to the GPU and we close up the case.
We were interested to know the improvement that this upgrade might have made. Before taking apart the older computer, we ran 2 tests on them, and we ran the same tests on the newer computer.
This is the Cinebench benchmark. Cinebench shows how well your computer will render images. This is a good way to know whether your PC would be able to do 2D drawing, 3D drawing, and rendering videos and other similar processes.
As you can see on the screen clearly, the Ryzen 9, our new upgraded CPU, is outperforming Intel i7, our older CPU.
The Ryzen 9 has a big advantage on the i7. i7 only has 4 cores to work with when the Ryzen has 12, and the core speeds are around the same.
Since we started making our YouTube videos, we were editing our videos on our i7 CPU. However, editing videos on that was a bit more time consuming.
We noticed when exporting videos, our CPU usage was maxed out, while our GPUs were actually doing nothing.
After doing a bit of research, we realized that we needed to optimize our video editing process by upgrading our CPU.
As of right now, this is a fairly economic build for video editing.
We looked at several CPU benchmarking sites and we found out that the single thread rating for both of these CPUs is fairly similar.
However, we're not really comparing apples to apples. The Ryzen has 3 times the amount of threads in its CPU than the i7 that we're comparing.
By the time i7 completed its first test, Ryzen had already completed its third test and was starting the fourth.
This first set of iterations has been done real time just to show you how fast the Ryzen 9 3900X was compared to the i7 6700. Right now we're going to go ahead and speed up this process.
The second test we ran on both the computers was user benchmark.
User benchmark allows you to benchmark your PC and build off of what you have. You can see the individual components of your PC and how they are performing against a group of people that have already tested their components. This is mostly for those who want a decent gaming PC and for troubleshooting to see if there might be a component of your PC that might be going bad. The test between the Ryzen 9 and the Intel i7 should be actually fairly close on this score because they look at completely different factors than the Cinebench.
During our user benchmark testing, we found that there was little to no improvement in gaming and desktop categories, but we found a significant improvement, about 20%, in the workstation.
Building a better workstation was our primary objective in this endeavor, and we definitely succeeded in doing that.
If you enjoy our content, please like and subscribe and leave a comment down below. What is your favorite PC build?
And if you'd like to support our channel, go ahead and check out our Patreon. The link is in the description below.